Hello everyone, this is Shadow Dragon from the DCUO community, and I just wanted to put together a video to give out some tips on the T8 mission from Age of Justice called War Crimes, because there are just certain strategies that will help you through a lot of these boss fights. Now this actually isn't the War Crimes instance, but I just wanted to get into the same map just so I have the freedom to show you guys around without any pressure of moving on. This is just a leveling mission, and I cleared it just so we could get the map. But it's generally the same thing. There are just a few differences. Like in War Crimes, this area is filled with poison, so you don't want to go there. And in War Crimes, this section of boxes is not here. So you just have this row of shelving here, and there aren't as many obstacles here either. This cage is still there. So just be aware of this cage because this side of the room is shorter. Now, in League, we run this two different ways. I guess it depends on who's in the group and what they're used to, because we found like two safe spots, and I've also seen this when we're doing pickup groups. Like a lot of people are used to one or the other, and I think they both work well, but they're like disadvantages and advantages to each spot. So the first one is, well, the boss Merzen is going to start here. So in the first spot, everybody runs over here. The tank will pull Merzen to this spot here, while everyone else jumps onto the conveyor belt and basically forms a totem pole here. And this works well if you have flyers, because they can just fly above the ones that are on the ground. Now for the first few seconds, Merzen will be by himself. So at that point you could actually keep attacking him, but it's good to try to position him here, or try to get him here. And that's not always easy because he uses rifle, so he doesn't have a true lunge. Like if he lunges, he doesn't actually land like right in front of the tank. He might still be far away. So it could take a while to get him here. But after a few seconds, the ads start appearing, and they're going to be lined up along the three other sides of the room. And they're going to have a tendency to fire in straight lines. So I think occasionally they fire diagonally, but for the most part, if you imagine like a checkerboard, there are going to be areas where it's somewhat safe. But this line right here is almost all safe, because like this is an obstacle blocking this side, and you'll mostly be blocked from this side here because they're going to be firing this way. This is the only vulnerable spot, this open spot here. So that you want to keep Merzen around here. The tank stays here and can pretty much do anything melee and just counter. And then the gunners firing from here will get blocked by this pole. So this has a nice line of straight area. Line of safe area, I should say. But the disadvantage here is if one of the other rolls, one of the non-tanks, happens to get knocked off the conveyor belt, it's kind of harder to reposition. So that's the vulnerable part there. For tanking, I think this spot is the safest. Now the other somewhat safe spot is if the tank stays here and pulls Merzen to this area. And in War Crimes, you're going to see some items on the shelves. The safe spot for the tank is marked by a computer monitor, like about in this area. And then there's like another object here next to it. So like within this little spot is like where the tank should be. So it's a smaller space than here. But this spot seems to be safer for the non-tanks who are going to stand about here. So they're going to be, the non-tanks will also be between the adds. And they're just going to range Merzen from here. So basically, against this wall, all of the adds will be firing this way. Against, like on this wall and the opposite wall, they'll be firing this way, but no one will be in this line. So you are fairly safe. So in this configuration, the tank has less spots to move. So that's sort of a small disadvantage for the tank. But one of the advantages for me personally, because I play a fire tank, is if Merzen kind of gets away for a while, I'll be burning the adds next to me, so I'll be like pulling extra heals off of burning targets there if Merzen happens to be far away for a long time. One of the bad things I've noticed though is if we get into trouble, like if the group wipes, as a tank, it's easier to solo Merzen from this spot than this one, because if you're here and he's moving around, like often you'll be targeting the adds by mistake, and that's basically just, it's wasting time and it's leaving you open to the boss. But if you're soloing him over here, you can almost attack the whole time, like, and not even get hit. As long as you're good with counter mechanics, that is. So yeah, pretty much those are the two safe spots. And you'll have no problem with it unless like someone falls out of position, then they could get knocked out. But in general, those two spots are pretty good, and you can even get by without a healer if everyone is like on the same page and pays attention to their health and doesn't get knocked around too much. Alright, so let me clear the next space for, I guess, the next two bosses. I'll go over the fake Dr. Fate, even though there's not too much on him, because they're both in the same. They're both going to be the same two maps, the next two bosses. Okay, so the second part of War Crimes takes place in this map, the Sentinels of Magic Citadel. And it's the same exact map as the villain solo, except it's a reverse, so this is actually the end, and I cleared it. But in War Crimes, you're going to enter from here, and then you have the repair box here. And you fight a much harder version of Dr. Fate, of course. So he'll actually start out where he's standing now. Be sure everyone walks into the room before you talk to him. And there isn't too much, I guess, mechanically with this fight. If you're familiar with the Dr. Fate legend character, he's going to have most of those attacks. He doesn't have any adds, so that's the easy part about this. But the thing is, he's gonna teleport around a lot, and he's gonna use a lot of hand blaster attacks. So he's easy to counter, but he does pretty heavy damage if you don't counter him successfully. Things you have to watch out for is whenever he lays down an Ankh, you just want to roll away from it, because that's going to explode and do heavy damage. He's also going to, I guess more towards the end, he lays down an AoE that looks like, it's like a recolored version of the Sorcery Circle, but it's going to have like spires on all four sides. Again, just like the Legends character. So when you see that, that's going to do heavy ticks of damage. You're going to want to roll away from that. So you don't want to get into a habit where you're kind of meleeing him and getting into your rhythm. Just don't forget about that pancake that he lays down on you. But other than that, like he's also become easier to tank. Like after the revamp, for some reason. Like before the revamp, he was a little bit more erratic, but now he does pretty much follow the tank. But he's just gonna jump around and teleport a lot. So what I do as a tank is I try to get him at the sides of the room, and I try to drag him along the sides of the room, because that way when he lays down his AoE, only half of it will be affecting like the battlefield. But for this one, I'd say it's just heavily on the counter mechanics. There isn't too much else to do other than that. And then you just fight adds through here. And then this is the final room with Eclipso. And this probably has the most points to go over. Eclipso is going to start out here. Everybody starts out here. If you're the tank, you have to lunge immediately after the cutscene, because if you don't, he's going to hit one of the non-tanks, and he has a good chance of taking him out too. So if you're the tank, as soon as the cutscene ends, lunge and aggro, and then roll back here so that you're not like, so that Eclipso is not facing the rest of the team. And what you want to do is try to pull him to this corner. And if you're any role, any of the other roles, what you want to do is try to range him from these corners. And for this fight, I recommend spreading out. Like, try to be at one of these corners, but not at the same one as a teammate. Because when he hits you, he has a chance of putting a pulsing aura on you. And that aura doesn't damage you as much, or I don't think it damages at all, but I don't notice it as much because I'm a tank. But it's gonna like heavily damage your teammates if you have that pulsing aura. So you definitely want to spread out, because that way you have, if you have the aura, that way you have less chance of hitting your teammate. And also, if you're spread out, you're going to be able to see everyone. Because if you're bunched together, sometimes it's hard to tell who has the aura. And also, something to keep in mind is when you get hit by Eclipso, there are two things that could affect you. You might have like this purple mist on you that doesn't pulse. That's not the aura. So if you have that, do not touch the Ankh, because the Ankh, there's only one Ankh that appears, and the person with the pulsing aura has to touch it. Because if someone else touches it, it's gonna clear the Ankh, and then the guy with the aura isn't gonna be able to cleanse himself. He has to wait for the next Ankh. So make sure you don't clear the Ankh if you don't have the pulsing aura. Okay, so if you get the pulsing aura, and there happens to be no Ankh, because sometimes there isn't, and you have to wait for it to appear, my recommendation is to get up against the wall. Because the pulse is a 360, so if you're up against the wall, only half of that circle will be on the battlefield and damage your teammates. So it'll reduce it by 50% if you hold it here. And also, like when you're trying to get to the Ankh, the reason why I say to be in the corners is because the Ankh will be like on the flat parts of the square. So that way you're not clearing the Ankh by mistake if you're fighting at the corners. And then if you have the pulse, you're going to work your way to the Ankh, but you're going to try not to hit your teammates. So obviously don't rush it, because if you have the pulsing aura, it's going to damage your teammates way more than you. So the way to travel to the Ankh is move around the room. Don't move across, because if your teammates are at the corner, or if they're fighting Eclipso like around here, and you move across the room, you're going to hit them with 1 or 2 pulses, which could take them out. So you move across the room, and you touch the Ankh on the flat areas of the inner square. Eclipso's attacks, he's going to use he's using hand blasters, and he's going to use them a lot. So again, look for the counter mechanics. Sometimes even Dr. Fate will be in this fight too. Sometimes Dr. Fate will help counter. And occasionally Dr. Fate also throws out some heals, but it's not going to be enough to keep the team alive if someone continuously has the pulse. But Dr. Fate is actually pretty helpful for an NPC in this particular fight. Other than that, his skull attack is going to be like, he's going to do like a stomp, and then he's going to hit you. Whether you're blocking or not, you have a chance of picking up that pulsing aura. So you do want to watch for that every time he attacks. When Eclipso jumps up and spins, he's going to release 2 adds, 2 Reapers. What you want to do if you're a controller is look for that and stun them as soon as they come out, because otherwise they're going to spin around in a circle and like CC you. As a tank, I have Chronomitic Emitter, and every time I see that Eclipso animation, like, I'll clip into Chronomitic Emitter and try to freeze them. But they're pretty easy to take out. It's just that you don't want them to hit first, because they're gonna stun and disorient your teammates. Now, if you get into trouble and the team wipes, you want to change up the strategy a little bit if you're solo for this. Like, instead of fighting at the corners, you move to the middle if you're by yourself, because that way you're the same distance from all 4 of these flat areas in case you have to get to the Ankh. You actually don't, like, the Ankh isn't a priority if you're by yourself anyway, because you're not pulsing and hitting your teammates. But it's just kind of annoying visually. So I go for the Ankh anyway. And then from there you just do counter mechanics, and you spread out your heals. Eclipso himself won't do heavy damage. For war crimes, like, as a tank, I actually have 3 different armory switches for the whole thing. For the first boss, Merzen, I'm in my full tank armor. When I fight the fake Dr. Fate, I'm actually in mostly DPS armor, because he does the least damage. And since he moves around, he's mostly like dodgeable. So I'm only about 1/3 tank when I'm fighting the fake Dr. Fate. And then for this fight, I swap in like, I'll go in with just a DPS weapon to start, but if the team wipes, then I'll swap in like 1 or 2 more DPS parts just to get the fight done faster. But yeah, overall the last 2 bosses don't do as much damage as the first boss. And the first boss, it's just like a just-in-case thing, because if you happen to fall out of line, you're going to get hit by the machine guns for a little while. So yeah, that's all I could think of, and I happened to pick up a lot of this in the when the DLC first hit and groups were wiping more, like when I was soloing these instances, I happened to pick up a lot of data, because like when you're doing that, you just see everything. So that's why I thought I'd do this video for the battle strategy for each room. But groups are definitely getting better as this content is out there. Like I'm constantly getting into non-healer groups now for this, and successful ones. Because if you have a healer, you don't have to follow a lot of this, because the healing, like regular healing, is enough to counteract that pulsing aura. So I think that's why a lot of people actually never learned this last fight, because they were always getting in with a healer and not actually paying attention to like difference between the pulsing aura and like the purple mist effect and that kind of thing. But you definitely learn a lot if you don't have a healer in the group. Okay, that's all I could think of. If you guys have any strategies, definitely put them in the comments below. Alright, thanks for watching, and good luck in Warcry.